Yes, indeed. Just gonna put this little bad boy right here. Oh, yes, indeed. As a nice little reminder, check out the link below. Mwah. Well, good evening. Laddies, lasses, and lassos, welcome to the click. You smell absolutely astounding today. And don't let anyone else tell you otherwise and insult your sweet, fragrant aroma. They would indeed be the butthole, which is a beautiful segue into today's video. Can you guess what it is? That is right, r/AmITheButthole, where we look into dramatic stories, social conundrums, and we can sit here at home and feel good about ourselves because we are the ultimate judges who gets to decide who is a butthole. Oh, we're basically God, but on Reddit. Enjoy. Mwah.
I am just tickling with excitement.
r/AmITheButthole. Am I the butthole? My roommate used my bed for naughties. Hey folks, I am thankful for your input. I don't think I'm the butthole, but who knows. My 30M best friend Alex, 30M, had a huge falling out with his family for career reasons. They threw him out and he's been living with me since. It's been great and fun. Alex has a guest bed in a separate room. Now, the one thing I noticed about Alex after a few weeks is that he's quite naughtily active. Nothing against that, his life, his fun. He used his guest bed for this too, which I am okay with as well. Now, I do have this sort of tradition for a few years that every Friday, after work, I immediately visit my parents and we're eating dinner together. A small family gathering once a week, if you so will. Last Friday though, in the morning while I was at work, my mom texted me that they won't be able to be at home for reasons, so I thought, why go there in the first place? And after work, I immediately drove home instead. Well, I enter my flat and I can hear the moaning. It was then that I noticed, number one, the door to the guest room, which is the opposite the entrance door at the end of the corridor, was open. And number two, the noises came from my right, which is the door to my own room. So after I realized 1 + 1 = 2, I stormed into my own room and saw Alex plowing some girl on my bed. I screamed at both of them, demanding the girl to get the frick out of my flat and asking Alex if he had lost his mind. Another thing I might need to add, if it matters, I don't know, is the fact that I am gay, which Alex has known ever since school. So not only did I have to think that my best friend was using my bed, but also that one woman, or more, have been in there as well, which absolutely disgusts me. I think you're justified to be upset about like your personal space being involved with other people's intimacy and them like not cleaning after themselves and stuff. I don't think you have to make it about like specifically genders and stuff being gross, because that's like an unnecessary road to go down and it's not nice no matter which direction it points in. Well, first action for me was going for that sheet and throwing it inside the washing machine. All the while Alex and I screamed at each other, him telling me to calm down, that I'm overreacting and stuff like that. I just repeated myself for the most part, telling him he is a butthole for using my bed, that he disgusts me, that he would be equally disgusted if I used his guest bed, and so on. He eventually stormed out angrily and was gone for several hours. I have spoken to some other friends, all three male and straight, and they all think I overreacted. That I should have told him about my mother's text and that I'll be home earlier, and now I don't know what to think. Did I overreact? Am I the butthole here for telling him he's disgusting and a butthole for using my bed for his naughty encounters? 'Cause it's nothing wild? Thanks for your answers and views. As a straight guy, I would have kicked him out right then and there, so I would say you underreacted. It's really cringy though how you told your story like the presence of the woman itself is what you found disgusting. How would you feel if a straight guy told you it was disgusting for you to sat down on his couch and tell me the two things are different? Not the butthole for being upset, he would be staying with one of the other friends of the street if it was my house. But you are the butthole for talking about women like homophobic men talk about gay men. Yeah, I think you have the right to be upset when your personal space is invaded, especially since he has his own room. What was he doing in your room to begin with, let alone in your bed, doing dirty things naked? You know, this is like someone offering you to wear their dirty underwear, you know? And if you did it now, who knows how many times he has done it before without even washing after himself. That's a weird thing to do in your friend's bedroom in that way. Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable with this either. This is odd. But the direction with like the whole genders you find gross kind of thing is not the direction to go with this ad. You can be upset about the invasion of privacy without going down that route. Am I the butthole for telling my husband he's too broke to be so sexist? Oh my god. Is this heading in the direction I think it is? This is gonna be beautiful. So my husband comes from a traditional family. Mom's a stay-at-home mom, father was a sole provider. I come from the opposite. My mother pretty much forbade from even being financially dependent on a man and drilled that into me early on. My husband worked hard to unlearn the values he saw replicated at home. He pulled his weight at home, was an engaged and present father and genuine partner. The one thing that grinds my gears is how much weight he puts on the opinions of his family. I get that we all want our parents to be proud of us, in-laws, but this is too much. My in-laws are staying with us for 2 weeks. Our usual MO is I prep breakfast, we all eat lunch at work/school, and my husband makes dinner. We also have a cleaner, but she's on holiday, so in the meantime we're DIYing the cleaning, where it's down to everyone to keep their space clean and common spaces we all clean. This is how we've always done it, and it works. My in-laws hate that I'm one of those modern women. They hate that I work, they hate that I don't find my purpose in being a wife and mother, and they hate that my husband pulls his weight at home. We spoke pretty frankly early on, where I established my boundaries and told them I won't be chastised about how I live my life in my own home. When I am a guest in their home, I accommodate to their ways and play the daughter-in-law they wish I was. They have, for the most part, respected this. I got home yesterday after work, tired and starving. I typically get home at 8:15 or 30 and we eat at 7. I say quick hellos and ran up for pre-dinner shower. When I came down, I went to the kitchen to help set up for dinner and found nothing ready. I asked my husband about it and he wouldn't look at me, and his mother answered that he hadn't cooked anything. She told me I needed to do my duty as a wife and cook for my family. Oh my... No matter what the context is, really, right? You don't like barge into someone else's house and demand them to restructure how they live their lives to accommodate your beliefs. That is so weird. My coward of a husband still wasn't looking at me. I just walked away and ordered takeaway. I dished up for me and my kids and we sat at a table to eat. My husband and his parents served themselves and joined us. My mother-in-law was still going on about what was wrong with me and why I was a failure. Jesus Christ, why are you allowing these people in your house? And why is your husband so incredibly spineless about this kind of stuff? Like, Jesus Christ, man. I asked my husband if he had anything to say. He said his mother had a point and it wouldn't hurt if I acted more like a proper woman and took better care of my home and children. He said tradition was tradition for a reason, and it was kind of insulting that I thought I was too good for how he was raised. If she's working and you're already home and your in-laws as well, I would imagine maybe they would even cook if they're like guesting in your home and they're not currently working. Like the person who comes home the latest from working the longest is probably not the one who should take care of everything at home as well. Like a relationship is a 50-50. Different relationships are split different ways, but now they're just demanding a one-way street. It's like, okay, so you should just quit your job and be a housewife because your in-laws told you to? Or are they asking you should do everything and just do everything at home and also have a full-time job? This is kind of messed up, no matter how you twist it. This is where I might be the butthole. I told him tradition won't allow a man on 35K to support a family of 5. And he was too broke to be so sexist. I'm gonna be perfectly honest. After all this BS, I don't think it's assholey enough. I'm gonna be honest. And also, let's be realistic here. In this time and age with like housing prices and food prices and prices for raising kids being what they are, how on earth are you going to afford to feed an entire family with 35K? That's like almost impossible. Like, what are you talking about? Oh my god, fam. He looked hurt and I saw tears welling in his eyes. He excused himself from the table. I regret saying this in front of our children, but him saying that to me after I'm busting my butt to clean up his mess on top of having to deal with his parents was too much for me. Am I the butthole? No, I don't believe this person is the butthole. I would probably just have kicked everyone out at that point, to be honest. Like, people staying with me as guests and then trying to dictate what I do with my life, and not even like while they're there. You know, it's one thing to have guests and they like have certain food preferences or something. That's fine, like that's fine. But literally trying to dictate your livelihood and how you structure your entire life, that is insane. That's like overstepping 5 layers of boundaries. Get the hell out of here. And also, like, the money argument is valid. Like, if you have a lifestyle that costs a certain amount and you have a house to pay off and children and all that kind of stuff, you can't expect only one person to be the provider. Usually in this kind of economy, it doesn't work unless he's making like $200 a year or something like that. But that isn't the case, so the whole thing is just out of the question by default. Am I the butthole for telling my husband's kids how broke he was when we met after they insinuated I was a gold digger? Oh, this smells like sweet family drama. Let's get into it. I, 38F, have been married to my husband Rob, 52M, for 4 years now. My husband's late wife died 1 year before we met, and we dated for 2 years before marriage. He has 2 kids, 28, Madison, and 26, Brett. Note that I am not calling them my stepkids because they explicitly told me I am not their stepmom, just their dad's wife. I didn't play a part in raising them, so I am okay with that. It's always been a bit tense between us. I've tried my best to be kind to them and have been very generous when I can be, but they are very cold with me. Being a child of divorce, I can partially relate to a parent moving on, so I try not to force anything. Madison recently got engaged and we are excited about it. Everyone was over recently and she asked about a wedding budget from us, and Rob told her he was able to contribute $10,000. She has bigger hopes for her wedding than this, so she was upset and kept asking for more. Rob, however, is still working hard on building his savings back up. Before his late wife died, he basically wiped out his cash savings, had to cash out his 401k, and even took a small mortgage on his house to cover medical costs, as well as life expenses since he had to cut back on working. Eventually he had to drop that job for a more flexible one but lower paying one, so this 10k is actually really generous from him. Rob went to run an errand, and it was just me and his kids. Madison then asked me if I was going to give anything in addition to what her dad was giving. I told her we are a marital unit and that's what we discussed together as a reasonable amount to contribute. She then said, "I should have known. Obviously you married an older man for what he had, not for what you could give." I knew she didn't like me, but this was the most flat-out rude thing she has ever said to me. I kind of lost it and said, "Excuse me, who do you think has been paying the second mortgage your dad took out to pay his debts?" Truth of the matter is, I make more than her father by a large margin. I have no debt and have been paying 70% of the household bills the whole time we've been married. The 10k we're giving her is available because I've been able to subsidize her father's living expenses the last few years. I made it clear that not only am I not a gold digger, I am literally wealthier than my older husband. She called me stuck up after this and stormed out. What an entitled brat. Especially considering they're not really including this person and see them as family. They only see them as family now when they have something to gain from it. That's the main thing. Like, you don't have to include every new person you're surrounding into your family if you're not comfortable, if you're still grieving, if you haven't moved on, or like they said, maybe they don't relate to it because they came into the picture when everyone was already an adult and older. You probably wouldn't really see someone as a parental figure at that point in your life. So like, that is fine to some extent. It's nice when people get along, but you don't have to make it more involved than it has to be. But you can't expect someone to like pay for your wedding as if they were your parent if you have never treated them or seen them as a parent. You see what I mean? It's like you have to choose which one, you know? You can't only choose it when it's of benefit to you. Then she called her dad later and said that I told her that I blamed her mother for being sick for her and not having a better wedding budget. Oh my god, she's a liar too. Nice. I told him what happened and he was mad at her, but also said I shouldn't have shared his financial details with his kids. Not the butthole, but your husband needs to have stern words with his kids. If he doesn't have a word about calling you a gold digger and then spouting lies, you maybe need to reconsider whether he does actually love and respect you. Perhaps he's the gold digger, or the kids are the gold diggers, I suppose. They try to like sneak their way in and be like, "But you were my parent after all, aren't you gonna pay for my wedding?" when they haven't like been interested in having them in their family anyway. It's like, that's more gold digging than anything else, to be honest. My god, the irony in some of these posts are absolutely staggering. Am I the butthole for saying, "Just leave" at my cookout? My sister Nicole, 34, brought her new boyfriend Steve to our family cookout yesterday. It's for about 30 people. For the sides, everyone brought something in. My sister brought in 1 bag of store-brand potato chips, and Steve helped himself to beer right away before even being introduced to everyone. We're having hamburgers and hot dogs and just hang out with the family. It's nothing fancy. Steve asks, Is this it?" when the first plate of hot dogs is done and waiting on the round of hamburgers. My wife says there will be hamburgers soon, and Steve tells my wife and sister about his family and how they have barbecue chicken, steak, shrimp, and many options. I picked up the plate of hot dogs and told Steve he could leave and go to his family barbecue instead. He just looked at me and drank his beer, and I told him and my sister to go since this wasn't good enough for Steve. I gave my sister store-brand potato chips back and told her to get out. I mean, especially if they're not contributing. Oh my god, that's one thing about these kind of stories. Something I see sometimes in like Insane Parents and those kind of subreddits. If you're invited somewhere and you get food and stuff for free, and especially if you're not contributing yourself, even with like sides or bringing drinks of your own or anything, just be happy, shut up, and enjoy it. And if it's not your thing, don't come. It really is that easy. You can't accept it and be whiny about it. What kind of behavior is that? My sister and Steve left, and the cookout was fine after that. My mom heard about me kicking them out and was mad at me and told me to apologize to my sister. Maybe there was a misunderstanding, but Steve was just a butthole commenting like that on someone's house and the first time we meet the family. My wife thinks I was right because Steve acted like that in her home, and insulting the host is a good reason to be kicked out. Others are split about 50-50 when they heard about what happened. Meh. I'm always of the opinion that, if you go somewhere and you're invited and you get food and drinks for free, especially if you're not expected to bring anything yourself, or if you choose not to bring anything yourself, just sit down and be grateful you're getting free stuff and someone is actually taking the time and money and effort to put all of this together and also cooking for you. What do you have to complain about? Who has ever complained about casual hamburgers on the barbecue? That's amazing.
Yes, in my family, we have boiled lobsters for barbecues.
Dear God, man. Dear God, what? I think if this happened to me, maybe I wouldn't just kick them straight out. I would just deny them food. I would just purposefully not serve them food and be like, oh, I didn't think you wanted any because you said how bad it is. And just watch them squirm for a bit. That's just me being a petty little butthole, but I think that's what I would do. That would be really funny. Am I the butthole for tricking my brother into selling me his half of our childhood home, then demolishing it? My mom and dad divorced when I was young. My brother loved the fact that our mom had no rules for him, so he went with her. I abided by the custody agreement because I had no choice in the matter. My mom loves us both, but she dotes on my brother like he farts perfume. Yeah, sometimes parents really do play favorites, don't they? And I've noticed that as a pattern too, especially with kids and teenagers, that sometimes they go along with the parent who will let them do the most stuff or stay up the latest or whatever, because of course you want freedom and want to do the things you want to do, but maybe it's not the best thing to do. Of course a small child would love you if they get to eat ice cream before dinner, that kind of stuff, but it's not really the best thing for the kid. Anyway, it's a small funny side tangent. My dad kept the house. He had to buy my mom out, and it was an old house built in 1953. It had old wiring and was really less than suitable for modern life. What it did have though was a huge yard that was great growing up. My dad passed away during COVID. He left everything equally between my brother and I. I wanted the house. I told my brother that we should tear it down and put infill housing like the new neighborhood is zoned for. He just wanted money, so I bought out his half of the house at market value. It was sold as a teardown. He took the money and bought a car and went on vacation. He still has money left. Then I had the house demolished and built a fourplex. Each unit has 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, a small yard, and a garage. I kept 1 unit for myself and rent each of the other units for $2,000 a month. My mortgage is $1,800 a month for the entire thing. So basically, I live free and bank $4,000 a month. My brother is pissed that I didn't give him a unit to live in for him since it was his home too, but you already got it though. You want the money for the house and the house? You know the old saying that you can't have the cake and eat it? This is exactly what that is. I actually offered to sell him one at cost, and he said no. But that would be the reasonable thing to do though. He already got the money for his half of the house, and then he would buy a portion back. That would be the fair thing to do though. What, is he expecting to basically have 3/4 of the house now? Because he's gonna get one of the condos for free? Bruh. I am lost. I offered him a partnership, paid a fair price, I offered to sell him a unit, did everything to try to be fair. He thinks I tricked him because I get free money every month. No, nobody tricked him. He just chose to spend his money on cars and vacations, which are things that very much deprecate in value, while you bought stuff that typically increases in value. You could have put this stuff in, instead of, having the house, you could have sold the property instead and just put this in, I don't know, index funds or something, and the money would probably still have grown, So it's it's just a matter of what you do with your share. You had the same money, or the same money from the house at least. God. Our mom said she would be cutting me out of her will and giving everything to him if I didn't give him a unit or the income from one. I'm not sure if you can actually do that though. Last time I read up on it, but this is Swedish law, of course. I think you are you have a minimum thing in your will that still goes to biological children, for example. I don't think you can write out 100% of it to one child if you have 2. I think there are laws about that, at least here where I live. Not sure how it is over there, but that's usually the case, so that seems more like an empty threat, spontaneously. I agree that it was fair and said that I would no longer feel the need to contribute to her upkeep or retirement when the time came. I am being bombarded by the 2 of them, but I took the risks. I took the debt, and this is my money now. That is so freaking entitled. Oh my god. And going to the mom as well, trying to hold a will over your head to give the brother something he has already gotten. He's already gotten the half of the house. That's the wildest part. They're asking you to give him his half of the house twice. That's essentially what they're asking, because he didn't invest his money in any smart way. And he got a vacation out of it, and he got a car out of it, and he still has money. He can still do stuff with it. That is just so entitled. This is just entitlement and jealousy, I swear to God. Am I the butthole? I told my parents they birthed a disabled child, so they just have to live with it. I, 22F, have been diagnosed with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dyspraxia, low muscle issues, anxiety, and I'm slightly blind. I got diagnosed from the age of 2 to 7 with everything. Due to all of my diagnosis, I am unable to drive anywhere. I can still bus places and take Ubers, but being driven somewhere is sometimes the best option for me. Multiple doctors told my parents I would be unable to drive due to being slightly blind and having anxiety. As I'm unable to hold a full-time job, I don't have heaps of money coming in, so Ubers are usually a last resort. Yesterday, I had asked my dad if he could pick me up at the bus I was supposed to take and never came. When he went to pick me up, he made a few comments saying it would be a lot easier if I could drive, and how I should learn to drive anyway, despite the fact that doctors don't want me to, as he hates having to pick me up all the time. r/thanks I'm cured, I guess. I replied that it's just what happens when you have a disabled child and it's something you have to put up with. He took a massive offense to that and told mom, who thought I was being incredibly rude. He picks me up once or twice a week at most. So I'm not judging here because there isn't really anything to judge, but I will posit this question. Do you expect him to drive you everywhere for the rest of your life? Do you have a plan for how you will gain a measure of independence? Not really directing this at you, just the world at large, since I am dealing with this in a different area of my life, and I think it bears repeating. Sometimes people are disabled in such a way that was traditionally considered independence, driving being a main example here, it's probably not something they're ever going to achieve, and that's not a moral failing. Sometimes it's just the way it is, and if you're someone dealing with that, you shouldn't be made to feel shamed for it. Again, not saying that you were saying anything negative, it's just that hearing someone bring up independence in the context of this post made me want to add this. ETA, since I've gotten quite a lot of feedback about this comment, I'm not saying that OP shouldn't look at practical solutions. Quite a few people on this thread have given great advice, and I would encourage OP and anyone in a similar situation to look at the resources people have brought up. The point of my comment was that some people are talking about this like it's the act of not being able to drive is a moral failing on OP's part, and it is not. It's a problem. She needs to be willing to explore solutions to the problem, and from her comments it sounds like she is. But the fact that the problem exists doesn't make her or anyone else who struggles with similar disabilities a bad person. I think this comment breaks it down incredibly beautifully, because it's about practicality and how you solve these practices of, for example, independence, and not so much about moral failings, because that's really not what this is about. I know people, for example, in my surroundings that have gotten access to, for example, services that drive them around. This is a thing specific for Sweden, so I'm not sure how this looks in other parts of the world, for example, but it's essentially like a medical taxi service, so to say, that you can be entitled to if you're, for example, elderly, if you deal with, for example, epilepsy, or these kind of things we're not able to drive. So there are resources depending on where you live that can help you deal with these sort of things. But like I said, it depends on where you live and other factors, so it's not like I can give a black and white response to it, but it's definitely worth looking into. r/am I the butthole? Am I the butthole for ignoring our daughter's inconvenient boundary? My wife, 39F, and I, 36F, have a daughter, and technically my stepdaughter, but I've raised her since she was 5, 19F currently, from a previous relationship on my wife's, her father is not in the picture, who has come back home after her first year at uni. She has picked up a new and problematic issue since she was last home for an extended period of time, surrounding laundry. Basically, she established a boundary where nobody is to touch her clothes. Her reasoning is that she's concerned something will go missing or get damaged, thinks it's just gross for us to go through her stuff, and is an adult who deserves privacy. All fine, we have 3 young children in our home, 9F, 9F, and 2M, so plenty of washing to keep us entertained. I like the slight sarcasm as well. I'm gonna be honest, the first thing like off the top of my head is basically like, oh sweet, coming back home after studying, like my laundry just gets like swept away with a bigger pile. I don't have to do it myself. This is beautiful. That sounds like a free service. It's like amazing. You get to feel like a teenager again. But, I don't know, maybe it's a gendered thing, but I've always seen that as a very big positive anyway. The issue is that she has a habit of monopolizing washing facilities to the extent where we're effectively prevented from being able to get any other laundry done. Oh no! Oh no! For example, last weekend she put a wash in before work and hung it out in the line around 11 a.m. She then left work at 12 p.m. to 10 p.m. Her wash was dry within an hour, and obviously she wasn't going to be back all day. We had a few days worth of washing to get through, so my wife, her mom, took everything off the line and folded it. We got through 5 other loads that day. She was not happy when she got home and said that she had been very clear that we weren't to touch her things. Okay, but really though, like how much of a privacy concern can it be if the clothes are like literally hanging where everyone can see them? I'm gonna be honest, fam, that doesn't sound like it's about privacy. It's a weird way of putting it. When we explained the situation above, she said it was first come, first served. But you're living in someone else's house that you moved back home to. Oh my god. Like laundry is one of those like, house things. It usually just cycles with whoever lives in the same house and everyone just tosses the laundry in a bag and then, it gets through and that kind of stuff. It's like a common room thing. This sounds so complicated. Oh my god. Not something we have ever said, and that since the next day was due to be nice also, we should have just waited to get through it the next day. That really pissed us off. We have offered her a weekly laundry day, where we will avoid using the machine so she can have freedom to do as she pleases on that day. But she said once a week won't cut it. Okay, fair enough, but there are 5 other people in the house that need clean clothes, bedding, and towels. Other than that, all we really suggest is that she keeps on top of her washing. If she's at home, we'll ask her to clear her clothes from the machine dryer washing line as needed. But like any 19-year-old, she has a social life and work commitments, and is often busy. She's upset because she says we're not respecting her boundaries. But wait a second. You're moving back home into someone else's house, right? Your parents, or your parent and your step-parent, right? And they probably have rules regarding laundry, which is a pretty basic household thing, because there are like multiple people living in this house, right? So laundry is probably something that cycles day in and day out as the basket gets full and new clothes are needed. To expect to be like a VIP of the washing machine when there are 5 other people in the house is an incredibly ridiculous expectation. Nah fam. And also, if you just want to be really mathematical about it, that means there are 6 people in the house, so you would have like 1 day per person if everyone wanted to do it themselves. So the offer of having like 1 specific day per person is actually quite reasonable as a compromise, but it still doesn't cut it. So then it's like, okay, no one else can do their laundry, I guess. She's upset because she says we're not respecting her boundaries. Whereas we pointed out that while "don't move my clothes" is objectively reasonable, it is not fair for her to do so at the inconvenience of everyone else in her home. And I think boundaries is also used in a bit of a backwards way here. It's one of those words that nowadays often gets like a bit weaponized in the wrong context, right? It's one thing if someone goes into your room and your private space and messes with your clothes and digs through your closet and stuff. I can see that. Yeah, that's definitely kind of invasive and it's for no good reason. But if it's like in the public space of the house or in like the laundry machine that everyone has to use, you kind of have to expect those places to be a bit public. If I left my backpack on a chair in the middle of like the family home and someone have to move it because they have to use the table for eating. And I'm like, oh my god, how dare you touch my stuff? It's like, well, you left it somewhere where it's an inconvenience for someone else. Of course they're gonna scooch it. That comes with the territory. On the other hand, if someone went in and messed with my backpack in my room, then I would be pissed. Context matters here, right? And your boundaries don't trump someone else's boundaries either. Like, what about their boundaries of how they do laundry and how they do laundry for everyone? That's also a boundary. Essentially, the last conversation we had ended up with her in tears because she said as long as situations like Saturday keep occurring, we'll continue to move her stuff. Just FYI, we do fold her clothes carefully and leave them in a basket in a communal living area so they're kept together, in good condition, and we're not going in and out of her room. That's just free stuff. Someone takes down your clothes and folds them. This is a favor. This is amazing. We normally have a good relationship with her, so this is all a bit unusual. We've asked her if everything else is okay, and she says yes and seems otherwise normal and of herself. And she's normally responsible, so are we being unreasonable? Not the butthole. This is bonkers. You can respect her boundaries, but she needs to work within your rules and schedule. Exactly, boundaries go 2 ways. She can't just dictate something then make it impossible to go about your own business. It's ludicrous. The good thing is, you have the upper hand here. If she doesn't want her stuff touched, then she better get it off the line before you need to use it. Yeah, I think that's the good takeaway. Like, you can be a bit VIP with stuff as long as it doesn't impact anyone else. If she just used it like, 1 hour in the middle of the day, that will be fine to get around. But if she's gonna occupy the machine or the line because she's literally not home and started laundry, and then the machine is literally unusable because you're not allowed to touch it while her stuff is in it when she's gone for 12 hours, then like, that doesn't really work. That's very silly. Come on now. Am I the butthole for making my parents replace my toys they decided to give away? I am moving to another city for work. Since I'm an adult and not a college kid, I hired movers. My parents insisted on coming down to help me pack up. I live in their basement suite. It was cheap and they let me have my privacy. They brought my brother and my nephew. The 4 of them were as helpful as a bag of used horse condoms. Especially my nephew. Now you see their moral support. They're sitting there like, yay, here you go, carry that box. Whoa. My parents decided to keep him busy by giving him one of my Lego sets to play with. I collect them. What I usually do is buy 2 of the same one. I build one, put it up for display, and leave the other one in a box to trade or sell. That's a very good way to do collecting when you do it casually, because then you can like mess around with the thing you love, but you still feel like you have the mint piece somewhere stashed away safely. Anyway, I digress. He took it upstairs to stay out of the way, and then he took it home. All I noticed is that he was out from underfoot. The next day, I saw the box in the garbage. I didn't want to assume things. I knew the answer already, but I didn't want to make assumptions. I went upstairs to talk to them, asked where the Lego box came from. They said they gave it to Travis to keep him busy. I told them that they needed to replace it. They said I was being childish for caring so much about a toy. Oh my god, I hate it when people do that, when they like turn it around as an insult. That is the most immature thing ever. If you're gonna shame someone for liking toys but being this immature at the same time, it's a little bit ironic, isn't it? And also, they took something that was theirs, didn't give it back. Of course you have to replace it. It's not about which specific thing it is, it's the fact that you took someone else's stuff without giving it back. Then you owe them a new one, or at the very least money to replace it. I told them that they needed to replace it. They said I was being childish for caring so much about a toy. I said they could replace it or I would file an insurance claim and that would probably require a police report. My dad got angry. He pulled out $70 and told me I was a butthole for making us fuss over a toy. But okay, if it is such a nothing thing, then you should have no problem replacing it either, right? That's the ironic part, you know? I asked him if that was a down payment. He said that is what he spent on the last Lego gift he got me for Christmas, and that is what those helmets cost. I showed him the box, told him to keep his money, he just have to give me a sealed box like the one he stole. He said he didn't steal anything, but he took the box and went to the Lego store nearby. When he came back, he was apologetic. He said he would get it back from my nephew. I said I wanted a sealed box with the TIE Fighter helmet. I even went on eBay to help him find one cheaper than the one he found by himself at the collectible store, and the guy at the Lego store sent him to. With the shipping, it would only be $300. Oh my god, so it's like one of the really big boxes. Oh my god, I mean, I could imagine like, okay, if a kid is playing with like a little Duplo set and they lose like two squares or something, like fine, whatever, shite happens. But you literally like bring home with you a $300 box of Lego, and then you don't give it back and be like, why are you making a fuss about it? It's just a toy. It's $300, man. And then they start insulting back and be like, why do you care so much about a toy? While being so incredibly immature and just think they can take stuff for free. $300, man. Oh my god. He ordered it and he wasn't happy about it. My mom is upset that I'm expecting that much money for a toy. But that's what it costed though. They were the ones who decided to take it and not give it back. My dad is upset I didn't explain before he went and made a fool of himself at the store. I'm upset that they stole from me. Am I the butthole? Yeah, no, they crossed a boundary. Like, sure, the kid playing with the Lego set is perfectly fine. Like, that's fine if you okayed it, but not giving it back? That's a little bit wild. Am I the butthole for telling my friend it's not my problem she married a useless man? Some of these titles are really spicy. They could be like titles of episode of some drama thing on Netflix. This is beautiful. I, 32F, am a single mother of 2 kids, 6 and 5. I am a single mother by choice. My kids are donor conceived. I am lucky enough to have a good job, French teacher in a private school, and a paid-off house, parents' life insurance, and inheritance. Before I had either of my kids, I made sure to have a year's living expenses saved. Then I would take a sabbatical year and recover from birth, as well as bond with my kids. While on sabbatical, I still tutor some kids for extra income. My friend, 32F, just had a baby 2 months ago. She is the breadwinner in her household, and her husband has been unemployed since he was laid off during COVID. It was great to be preggo at the same time, as well as having a friend with a newborn. But it has turned sour. She has been saying how jealous she is of me being able to take a whole year off from work, how she would have loved to not worry about losing their home, how she doesn't even have a couple of $100 in her savings account, let alone a whole year's worth of living expenses. I usually ignore it, or brush it off, because I kinda can understand the stress that she is under. Well, starting about 10 days ago, she started hinting at not being able to afford daycare, and any mention of her husband taking care of their kid is brushed off. But doesn't he have a lot of time on his hands though? That seems like, the obvious choice here. Then she stated, remarking on how much free time I must have, which I deflected by saying, truthfully, that being a single mom to a baby and a small kid left me no free time actually. Yeah, like having 2 kids on your own, like that's 2 full arms all the time. Like dealing with 2 kids constantly on your own, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. It's hardly like just playtime for yourself. Then last night she came out with it and asked if I could do her a favor and watch her kid while she's at work. I was firm but polite and said that I couldn't, that I'm not capable of watching 2 kids under 6 months. She started almost begging me, saying she can't afford daycare and if she's not back at work she will lose her job and they will end up homeless. I again brought up her husband, and she said that he was no good with kids and isn't capable of taking care of her kid. Oh my god. So he doesn't have a job. He doesn't do anything else during the day, but he can't babysit his own kid. Oh my god, man. I kept saying no. She kept pushing, until it escalated to her calling me heartless. What? And me telling her that it's not my problem she chose to have a kid with a useless man. And now she blocked me. I am feeling very guilty about what I said and feeling like a butthole. Eek! Not the butthole. I think there were no buttholes here up until the point she was pressing you to do this favor. Yeah, like the thing here is that it's not your fault that she's dealing with this stuff, and you're very busy yourself too. You can't always expect people in your surrounding to specifically solve something from you. The first step obviously would be to get the husband to do it. Like, he doesn't like kids that much is a garbage excuse when your wife is the one being the breadwinner and the one babysitting the kid and you can't afford daycare. Like what kind of two-way street relationship is this supposed to be? This is absolutely wild. So pressuring your friend about this who's already raising 2 kids by her own is definitely the wrong person to go pressing on. My god. And of course the stress around it and stuff is very understandable. That is not the butthole move. But the butthole move is simply putting it on the wrong person. Your friend who's also raising 2 kids by herself is completely innocent in this. She is not at fault or responsible for this problem. Your partner needs to step up. That's the person who deserves the pressure. The stress is valid, the pressure is applied at the wrong place. You're exactly right that it's not your problem that she's in this situation, and while I do think a heavy dose of empathy is important to your friendship, her having a husband who isn't employed and cannot contribute to the childcare she needs is a problem that she needs to solve. It is annoying and impractical for her to think the answer here is for you to provide childcare. Yeah, and it's not going to be a one-time thing either. You know, if you say yes, it's going to be like the default from now on, which is going to be wild, like taking care of 3 kids all by yourself every day. Oh my god. It is dismissive of the fact that you are busy already, and that you already have about 7 months remaining of the time you're allowed yourself to be on hiatus, so it's a short-term solution. It's too bad that she's letting her situation cloud her judgment. You are not heartless, and that was an unfair response for her to have, and inappropriate behavior all throughout this interaction. I mean, the conclusion is just, it's good to be empathetic towards the stress. That sounds like a very bad situation, but this friend is definitely putting the pressure in the wrong place. She's letting it invade a friendship instead of fixing the problem in the relationship. Am I the butthole for telling my cousin she's no longer allowed to be a bridesmaid in my wedding because she wants to bring her boyfriend, who is my ex, and I don't want him there? My cousin is currently dating my ex, with whom I ended things amicably. Although I no longer have feelings for him, I do not want him at my wedding, a day that is incredibly important to me. I do not want him there to potentially overshadow the happiness of the occasion. Additionally, their relationship is still quite new, and I worry that if they break up, my cousin will be glad that he is not in any of the photos. When my cousin brought up the issue of bringing her boyfriend as a +1, I told her that she could not bring him. She became upset and tried to argue her case. Feeling frustrated, I finally told her that if she insisted on having him there, then I would rather she not be there at all. And now she's angry with me. I understand where my cousin is coming from, but I feel that she is not considering my feelings and the feelings of my own partner, whom I also have to consider when planning weddings. Am I in the wrong for standing my ground on this issue? I'm gonna be honest, if I was like the boyfriend in this situation, right? I'm not sure if I would be interested in attending like the wedding of an ex. That feels a bit odd, doesn't it? Like even people I've ended things with amicably in the past, I don't feel it's like my place to be at, if that makes sense. It feels like a bit odd. So even from that perspective, I'm like, why would the ex-boyfriend even go along with it to begin with? Not the butthole. Your wedding, your guest list, end of discussion. I am curious though as to how on earth could an ex that you say you partnered ways with amicably possibly overshadow your happiness on the day that you marry someone you're completely in love with? Or is it your fiancé who is bothering you by an ex being in attendance? Yeah, like overshadow is a weird way of putting it. Like I think for me it would just be a matter of like, it doesn't feel like I'm in the right place. It wouldn't be like the biggest thing ever, depending on who it is, I suppose, but it just feels like the wrong thing at the wrong place, if that makes sense. I just wouldn't be particularly interested in attending it because it's not my thing. It's someone from my past, you know. It's not relevant. So overshadow seems like a very strong word, and while insisting there's nothing else to it, you know. So it sounds like there is more bubbling under the surface there. If I was the boyfriend in the situation, I just probably wouldn't be very interested in attending, period. That would probably be the reasoning. But yeah, it's your wedding, your guest list, so yeah, whatever. Am I the butthole for refusing to help rekindle my girlfriend's friendship with our neighbor after she refused to help her in an emergency? My 25F's girlfriend, 26F Lada, has always been on the more quiet and reserved side, but also incredibly kind and conscientious of other people. She also doesn't let others walk over her, and she knows how to set and stick to boundaries, which is one of the reasons I was attracted to her. But a few weeks ago, I think she was too ruthless. A few weeks ago, our upstairs neighbor, who Lada and I are close with, showed up at our door sobbing and begging Lada to babysit her 5-year-old for an hour because her 1-month-old was having trouble breathing and had stopped breathing at one point and needed to go to the hospital ASAP. Oh my god! Yeah, that is a really scary situation. The neighbor explained that her mother was on the way as they speak, but she has no one else to take care of her other son. She also offered to pay Lada. I was at work at the time. Lada said no. She said she was busy and couldn't do it. The neighbor ended up taking both kids to the hospital. I found out about this incident when I got home from work and Lada told me. I was genuinely surprised to hear she said no, which seemed to annoy Lada. It's been 3 weeks since that event, and our neighbor has been quite cold to Lada, and this really bothers her. She says she was just setting boundaries and that our neighbor was entitled and snobby for being upset that Lada said no. I mean, boundaries and that sort of thing, but this is definitely an emergency. Like, this isn't a situation where someone comes and be like, oh my god, can you babysit? I planned poorly and I need to go pick up milk. You know, it's not like an everyday thing and someone just being sloppy with their planning and trying to put it on you and maybe do it repeatedly. This is a very specific emergency, potentially life-threatening emergency involving little kids. Like, this isn't something that is going to be reoccurring. It's not someone taking advantage. This isn't really a topic for boundary setting. This is just helping someone else in an emergency. That should be the decent thing to do. I explained I felt differently, and I am more on our neighbor's side as 1, she has never asked us for any favors in the 3 years we've known her, and 2, this was a medical emergency, not her wanting to go clubbing with her friends. Exactly, yeah, it's one thing if they just dump their child and be like, we don't want to pay for a babysitter, you have to take our child now, dear neighbor. Like, that's one thing. That's just entitlement. It's not an emergency. It's poor planning and entitlement and dumping it on someone else. But this is like a literal medical emergency, life-threatening for a small child. Nah, fam. Nah, I don't agree that this is just like setting boundaries. That's the wrong word to use for this. I told Lada that she didn't teach our neighbor a lesson, she only added stress she didn't need. I also think it sets a horrible precedent between the relationship between these neighbors. What happens next time, but the emergency might be on your side and you desperately need someone really quick to hold something for a bit or take care of a child for a brief period while you drive someone to the hospital. Is your neighbor gonna do it for you now because you obviously didn't want to do it for them? It's a really bad precedent to set, and I don't think Lada in this situation has really flipped the situation in her mind and realized how messed up that becomes really quickly. This really upset Lada because she thought I would be on her side. She then asked me to talk to our neighbor and try to rekindle their friendship. Okay. So dumping that on your partner instead, that's nice. I said I can't do that for her. She needs to apologize herself and put in the work. Lada stormed off and now keeps saying I'm being a huge butthole for not siding with her and helping her with our neighbor who is her friend. Am I the butthole? Okay, you can't call the neighbor your friend and not help them out when their child is literally in a life-threatening situation and she just needs someone to emergency babysit. And according to this, the mom was already on the way, right? So you have to watch a 5-year-old for 20 minutes maybe, or something like that, until someone else shows up that can take over. That is nothing. That is absolutely nothing. It's actually minuscule sacrifice in the grander scheme of things, considering the seriousness of the emergency and the minimalistic sacrifice you would have to do to actually help this person, and also set the standard that you legitimately are their friend and they can count on you when shit hits the fan, and also the other way around, because then you can count on them in the future and you have set that standard and then you have a close relationship. This is so bad. I don't get this logic. It is so weird. Setting boundaries is not the same thing as just never being there for people. Those are not interchangeable. Am I the butthole for refusing to let my in-laws stay with us again? My husband, 34M, and I, 31F, recently threw a birthday party for our 3-year-old daughter. We also have 2 other little ones in the house, 2F and 1M. My husband's dad decided that he wanted to stay with us for the party. He brought his wife, my brother-in-law, and my sister-in-law. We were hosting almost 100 people in our house. Oh my god! I don't think I've ever seen 100 people gather for little kids parties. You know, that is absolutely wild. I ordered most of the items we needed for hosting, serving purposes, and had the food catered. All we needed to do on the day was move around our house and accommodate the tables, chairs, hosting equipment, and set everything out. My father-in-law decided to spend most of the day in his room and away from the setup. His wife was constantly walking around and complaining about being asked to stay quiet since the baby was napping. As I was running around carrying large tables, moving furniture, decorating, watching children, etc., my husband's family was calling me mean names behind my back while also being no help at all. Not even hanging out with the kids that they were supposedly there to see. Okay, so this is like during the prep of the party, I suppose, like they're running around fixing and them not helping and just being snide about it. After the party, my family stuck around to help clean up. My husband's family also stuck around, apparently just to judge. My father-in-law, his wife, sister-in-law, and brother-in-law all stayed out of the way and napped while we cleaned up. My mother-in-law and her husband sat around and watched my family clean up. After my mother-in-law and her husband left, 3 hours after the party ended, they were apparently talking about how weird it was that my family was helping and how gross it was that everything needed to be cleaned right away. What? Gross? Isn't that the opposite, though? Isn't it less gross to just clean? What? They said that my kids are probably going to have problems as they grow up since I keep them in such a sterile environment. My house is in no way perfect, but after hosting that many people, there is definitely some cleaning to do before letting 3 under 3 years old run around the house again. Fam, when I've hosted like, New Year's parties with like 12 people, it is a lot to clean up. Like all tables and counters and stuff are just full with empty bottles, empty plates and dishes and stuff. It takes like a good chunk of the evening afterwards and like the morning after to clean up. And that's after a dozen people. Cleaning usually takes a decent chunk of time if you have guests over. That's just how it goes. I told my husband that his family is no longer allowed to stay with us when they're in town for events, and they need to leave when the event is done. I am tired of feeling judged in my own space. He says I'm being too harsh and that they're just not as clean as we are. He thinks since they didn't actively hinder us and didn't make these comments directly to me, I should just brush it off. Am I the butthole? Not the butthole. My husband's family also stuck around, apparently just to judge. Not okay. If you can't get off your butt to help, at least be gracious to your hosts. My husband's family was calling me mean names. Even less okay. I'm tired of feeling judged in my own space. You are not being too harsh. If your husband can't rein his family in, then they don't get to stay. You don't need your kids overhearing that BS as they get older either. I think this story also falls into the same one as the barbecue story. It's just ungrateful guests. Like if you are invited to something, you get food and stuff for free and someone has put together the time and money and effort and time to like make everything work and invite people and feed you and stuff. Just be grateful. Like Jesus Christ, what do you have to complain about? You're getting free stuff. Oh my God. Am I the butthole for not pretending a gift was from my ex-wife or reminding her it was the kid's birthday? I used to be married a few years ago. It was not a happy marriage and we divorced. She needed to go back to work after the divorce and her quality of life isn't where it was when we were married. Due to this, she hasn't handled the transition well and I got primary custody. She still sees them on weekends. It was my middle child's birthday yesterday. She got 0 calls from mom, no present was dropped off, and she didn't go to the party. She was invited.
Oh, that is so sad. Oh my God, what?
She is 12 years old and noticed right away. She was not happy at all and apparently she promised her that she would at least call. My daughter sent quite a mad message to her and is ignoring any messages from her mom at the moment. She gave me a call pissed off. She called me a butthole for not reminding her at the minimum and that I could have pretended a gift was from her. Wait a second, but you've already said to the kid that you're gonna call them for their birthday. So you probably had like this in your mind quite recently, but you didn't put it in your calendar. You didn't even memorize your own kid's birthday. And then you blame someone else for it. That's kind of bad, fam. I can see covering for someone with a gift if it's like a legitimate reason, right? If she, for example, is going through a medical emergency or, a loved one has recently passed away and it's very occupying, stuff like that, if there's an emergency happening or something very understandable. But this just sounds like everyday stuff and she just kind of neglected it. That's not really a valid reason to do this kind of covering for it, and it's also setting the expectation it will keep happening in the future. I don't know about that. I told so be it. It's not my problem, and it's not my fault she can't remember basic things. I don't know if I went too far. Nah, that sounds like something she needs to figure out, to be honest. If she's forgetting the birthday, she's gonna be forgetting other stuff as well. So this is just something she needs to figure out, how to balance her life and how to give her kids attention. It's not on you to manage their relationship. Well, laddies, lasses, and lassos, I do hope you enjoyed this juicy video as much as I enjoyed having you here, you wonderful, beautiful, nice-smelling bean, and I will see you again in the very near future. Take care. Mwah.